Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Marvel Team Up Annual Number 2, Spider-Man and the Hulk. And this was dated 1979. Although the cover and the legal notice, they don't give a specific date, but according to Mike's amazing newsstand blog, this was released in the United States in on September 18th of 1979. So the kids were just coming back from the summer that year, summer vacation, and they're kind of greeted with this issue on the newsstand. It's fine. It does kind of read like a summer issue. Um, the story isn't great. It's very typical of Marvel Team Up, which is kind of like a done in one story. The reason why I chose this story is because of the Many Loves of Spider-Man. And this contains Cissy Underwood. This is probably the most prominent story that Cissy is a part of, and she's hardly in it. And that's somebody calling the police on this issue. Although it's really not that bad. But the thing is, what's strange about it is that this was written by Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont, to his credit, he wrote some really good Marvel team up stories. Some of the other writers, and I'm looking at you, Jerry Conway, would kind of write these very hackish stories. I don't think this was a comic that was well respected in the Marvel bullpen, though it lasted more than a dozen years. But it was a title where if you're gonna submit hack work, this is a title you can get away with. And this is a pretty decent story overall. One thing I will say, it reminds me a lot of the James Bond film Octopussy, and there's a lot of elements in it, and it's understandable why Marvel writers would choose James Bond films or James Bond source materials, because around this time, Marvel was adaptating the Bond films, and I'm sure most of the writers were probably familiar with it. I'm sure Chris Claremont, he had read Octopussy. He knew it was on the slate, and he might have been inspired because there's a lot of elements in that story. I believe Octopussy came out in 1982. So we're going to look at the cover. Cover's by Al Milgrom, who was an editor at the time, and he had originally started as kind of an assistant to Jim Starlin, because they both had a kind of a very similar style. Both Starlin and Milgrom, they really liked Steve Ditko, and particularly Steve Ditko's artwork in Doctor Strange, not necessarily Spider-Man. And you could see a lot of his work in both Starlin and Milgrom's. And this does kind of have a Steve Ditko feel. Steve Ditko at the time was working for Marvel. He didn't want to do that, but he needed to pay the bills. You know, he's only a disciplined libertarian and Ayn Randian to a point. You know, he's not going to get homeless over it. So he came back to Marvel, and he was drawing similar work as to what was seen in this cover. Sorry, gummies. We see Spider-Man here. He's centering it. He's trying to hold these two large globes that actually look like sea mines. You know, the ones that would be tossed from ships, destroyers, and stuff like that. And they're coming closer and closer together. And Spider-Man's saying, I gotta keep these globes from touching, or they'll destroy the world. And behind Spider-Man is looming the Incredible Hulk, and he looks like he's about to pounce on Spider-Man. So we get an idea of the extreme stakes and consequences of what's going on. At this time, both Spider-Man and the Hulk were big TV stars. Both of them had shows on CBS. The Hulk one obviously was the more successful of the two. And I guess I can kind of talk about the show as I'm going into it, into this story. So I'm going to start by turning the page, and the name of this issue is Murder in Cathedral Canon. Take a look at the creative team. Chris Claremont, he had written this story. Decent story, although the one thing that is a little unusual is that Cissy Ironwood is kind of given the short staff here in terms of the amount of time she spends in it. She's hardly in it, even though there's a huge major event happening in her life. Normally, Chris Claremont was very mindful to give a lot of effort and thought into writing female characters, and he was really kind of one of the first Marvel writers to do that. But for some reason, I don't think he liked Cissy that much, or he didn't think much of her. The art team, it's there's kind of two art teams here. Sal Buscema, he draws the first 9 pages, I should say. And after that is Alan Kupperberg, and he kind of finishes up the rest of the artwork, and he also gets an assistance from Jack Abel. So there's sort of really there's a lot of artists on this story. I guess for some reason this might have been behind in terms of scheduling, that they kind of like couldn't stick to one art team. And Jim Shooter is the editor-in-chief. Jim Shooter, who sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago, didn't get a chance to see the new super. He might have seen the new Superman. He definitely didn't see it in theaters, or at least not with the general public. He probably did get to see a screening. The new Superman film, I kind of is like, it's okay, it's fine. There's a lot of problems with it. I think the main problem with it is that even though it was written by James Gunn, it seems like a story that was written by someone who really doesn't like superheroes. And there's a lot of there are good things to it. I think the cast was pretty good, although there were some characters that did not make me think of the classic Superman characters. The guy who played Superman I thought was fine. I had no problems with him. The Green Lantern casting was really good. Hawkgirl I thought was really good. Even Mr. Terrific, although his character was way too fussy. That was one of the problems with the film, is that they spent so much time with the kind of the fussy Mr. Terrific and the weepy Metamorphoso. I know I'm not pronouncing that name correctly. They spent way too much time with those two characters and not enough time with Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. And I even got the feeling that and Superman was taking a beating. He spent most of his time in this movie on the floor, getting his ass kicked. Krypto was a more effective superhero than Superman in it. And the story kind of had this weird Watchmen type feel to it. It was just a mess. Although I did enjoy the 3D, and like I said, the guy who plays Superman is really good. So I'd kind of recommend seeing it, but you're not going to there's no second viewings. Okay, so that's it. And I'm going to get into the story. As I mentioned, it is Murder in Cathedral Canon. We see the splash page. Kind of looks like a romance comic. We see Peter Parker here, and he is passionately kissing his then current girlfriend, Cissy Underwood. Cissy Underwood kind of has a Suzanne Summers type feel to her. She's very attractive, very, very well dressed here. Sal Sal put these two in kind of really nice outfits. Sissy is talking about how lucky she is that she has a boyfriend like Peter. She's telling Peter, "Hey Peter, all my friends, they think you're a dud. They think you are an absolute loser. They think I am crazy for dating a loser like you, and that you're gonna ruin my life. But I enjoy being a ruined woman because I'm in your arms here. I'm kissing you, and this is just amazing. I mean, I'm in loser heaven right now." That's basically what Sissy is telling Peter. Turn the page. And see that Peter is reciprocating. He doesn't mind being called a loser. And Sissy is saying, listen, like I said, everyone thinks you kind of this mild-mannered, wimpy guy, but they don't know the real you. And yeah, to a degree, Sissy was able to see sort of underneath some of Peter's surface faults, and she gambled on him, and as far as she's concerned, she won this gamble. Now, they're in front of Sissy's apartment or townhouse, which is not really Sissy's apartment or townhouse, though it becomes it later on, because she lives with her dad. Sissy is a good girl. Sissy is a very good girl. When she invites Peter for a nightcap, she's saying, "You're not getting soda pop. That's going to be too heady for you. You're definitely not getting the gummies. You can get some lemonade, that cool, refreshing drink." And Peter he's all in for it. He can't wait for that lemonade. And but then as they're going up the steps, Peter's spider sense starts to tingle. And then from inside out, we see that the door is smashed by one of Marvel's, I would say, mid-tier supervillains, the Crimson Dynamo. Crimson Dynamo was sort of the Russian answer to Iron Man. Crimson Dynamo has kind of a cool-looking look to him, like the armor look. The name is great, Crimson Dynamo. And he's smashing the door. Both Peter and Sissy are obviously surprised by this. Now, Peter is a little less surprised, with his experience as Spider-Man. Also, Peter is aware of who the Crimson Dynamo is, given that, he's been working at the Daily Bugle newsroom for years. And he's not necessarily completely surprised by this, but he does know that he is up against a formidable opponent. Now, Peter, being a good boyfriend, he puts himself in front of Sissy because his main concern is with Sissy here and her safety. Crimson Dynamo just sees a couple of kids that he's frightening, and being just like a real heel, he starts like flexing here, saying, "Fool, do you think you could stand up to my armored might?" Peter's kind of hoping he does. Again, Crimson Dynamo kind of being a bit of a jerk here. Flexing his muscle against two people who he knows can't really fight back against him. But he doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because he's not after Spider-Man. Peter, he does a judo hold against the Crimson Dynamo. Now, the fact that they're on the steps, Peter is hoping that this will help cover up his secret identity, because he's counting on maybe the Crimson Dynamo believing that he tripped rather than Peter throwing him. And this way he hopes that this underestimation will kind of throw any suspicion that Peter does have superpowers. The judo hold works perfectly. And you see the Crimson Dynamo is smashed into some parked cars that are in front of the townhouse. I'm sorry for being distracted, but my neighbor's bird is singing and it's driving me up the wall. So anyway, take a look at the next page. And the Crimson Dynamo has been thrown for a loss here. He's a little confused, little disoriented. And Peter decides to take advantage of this situation by grabbing Cissy's hand and getting out of this particular area. Now, Cissy is concerned about her dad because she knows that her dad was in the townhouse. And, she kind of actually wants to go back to see how her dad is. Again, Cissy's a good girl and she's being a good daughter. Peter understands Cissy's concerns. However, he makes the point that we have to get out of here first. It's similar to when there's a fire at someone's home, and you see the firefighters, and they're spraying the home with water, and you don't say, "Hey guys, stop! You're going to flood my basement." Say, "No, we got to take care of this fire first." And that's what Peter's saying. He's saying, "Listen, we got to get ourselves out of here first before we can think about your dad." Now, obviously, at this point, Peter does want to change into Spider-Man. But he knows he really can't because he has Cissy here. And he has to think about her safety and her concerns first. And in fairness to Peter, that is what he's doing. Again, he's a good boyfriend. But then as the two are running from the scene, they're immediately stopped by this black force. Kind of like this black force field. And then it turns out that another Russian superpowered individual called Darkstar. And I remember seeing her in some issues of the Champions. And Peter remembered those issues too, because he's familiar with Darkstar. And Peter is somewhat familiar with the Champions. This was the West Coast superhero team in the mid-1970s. Because when the team broke up, Peter Parker was actually sent to California to cover the story. And then he ended up having some type of adventure with Angel and Iceman. So right now, Peter, he recognizes who he's up against. Obviously, the motives are kind of escaping him. He's not really thinking about that at the time. But he's surprised. He's not surprised by the Crimson Dynamo. But he is surprised by Darkstar because from what he knows of Darkstar, Darkstar is one of the good guys. And we see that Darkstar also has Professor Ironwood, that's Cissy's father, held captive. So at this point, the two of them, Peter and Cissy, they know that Cissy's dad is at least healthy and alive, although he is being held captive by these very powerful individuals. Then we see a third superpowered Russian show up. And this is one that Peter is not familiar with. In fact, he says, "And who's this bozo carrying a hammer and sickle?" This bozo is Vanguard. I'm not familiar with Vanguard outside of this issue. He kind of looks a lot like Hyperion. And his powers is he has a hammer and sickle, which was a symbol of the Soviets. And the thing is that when he clanks them together, they produce a great deal of power output. So that's really his superpower there. These very powerful reaction when he puts his hammer and sickle together. Now, during this time, Peter realizes that he's probably going to lose this fight. One, he's handicapped by the fact that Cissy's there, that Professor Underwood is there, and the fact that he's in his civilian clothing. So he realizes that it doesn't look good for him. So what he does is that he takes a spider tracer and he attaches it to Cissy's dress here. And actually, he kind of attaches it to her belt. This way that, when he loses this fight, he can kind of maybe try to track down Cissy. Turn the page. I'm going to take a look at an ad here. And it's a Hubba Bubba ad. I think Hubba Bubba was fairly new at this time. They had just came out. People knew about this candy because they did spend a lot of money on TV commercials, particularly Saturday morning or during the time when the local channels would air commercials. It's a well-drawn ad, but at the same time, the kid here looks kind of creepy. This is kind of a creepy kid with one of these bowl cuts that were very popular. There were a bunch of guys on TV like Adam Rich and Cousin Oliver had a bowl cut. And there were a few others. And, it kind of looked like you can eat a bowl of cereal from these haircuts. The next ad is Spider-Man meets June Jiu-Jitsu. This is a Twinkies ad. See Spider-Man, it looks like he's in Central Park here. He does have a bag with him. So he might have gone to Central Park. Maybe he wanted a little lunch to himself in the park. But June Jiu-Jitsu decides to ruin that. And it turns out we're told that June Jiu-Jitsu, gorgeous but evil, expert in karate, kung fu, and other martial arts. And we see she's a very attractive Asian woman. And she immediately goes on the offense. She kicks Spider-Man in the side. Then she kicks him in the head. He's taking a beating here. I don't know if he's muttering, "Oh yes, 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 please do, my Asian mistress." But he doesn't really enjoy this beatdown from her. So he goes into his bag and he takes out 2 packs of Twinkies. He throws them at June, and June just immediately stops. June loves her Twinkies. They're kind of like these. They're yellow and they're spongy and they have white stuff in them, and she just loves savoring them in her mouth. And Spider-Man then just kind of webs June Jiu-Jitsu from the side, hangs her on a tree. She's webbed up in a way that if Spider-Man wanted to start to spank her, he could if he wanted to. And then he says, "I have a feeling that's a threat, not a promise, because June Jiu-Jitsu wants to come back for some more Twinkies." I think Twinkies were like 35 cents back then. Turn the page. I'm going to go back to the story. This is Sal's last page. Peter, he doesn't know what to make of Vanguard, though he knows he has to go on the offense here. Vanguard swings his hammer at Peter. Peter, obviously, with his spider reflexes, he ducks it. And then he gives Vanguard this impressive left uppercut here. And he's really taking it. And Peter's throwing some really nice punches. Now, the thing is, Peter has to worry about his secret identity. But Peter also realizes he has to step it up. Because these guys are pretty dangerous here. And Vanguard is taking these blows. And he's not really reacting to them. So if anything we know about Vanguard is that, hey, he has a pretty sturdy body. Like I mentioned, he looks a lot like Hyperion. Then we see once Vanguard puts the hammer and sickle together, a great deal of force is released. Peter is then thrown back by this, and he's thrown into the hands of the Crimson Dynamo. Crimson Dynamo is really pissed off. He doesn't know how Peter was able to kind of throw him off the steps. So Crimson Dynamo, he's sort of like not really questioning the situation. He's just saying, "Hey boy, you got lucky." And suddenly Crimson Dynamos, he turns into Drago from Rocky 4. And he's all ready to plummet Peter here. He has this kind of what he hits, he destroys attitude, and he just belts Peter right here. Kind of like, really impressively belts him. Peter's flying like a rocket. We see that everyone else is horrified by what happened because they weren't there to murk Peter and they didn't want to hurt this guy. They just simply wanted to kidnap the Underwoods here. Darkstar is particularly upset over the fact that, they had basically murked, Cissy's boyfriend. You figure Darkstar, she's looking at this fight saying, wow, she has a great boyfriend. This boyfriend has no superpowers, but he is giving these two guys a fight. And she must have been super impressed, saying, how can I get these, Vanguard to do that for me? So anyway, the others are kind of taken aback by Crimson Dynamo's brutality here. Crimson Dynamo, again, he's still channeling Drago, saying, if he dies, he dies. And we see Peter's seemingly lifeless body as the Russian trio scurries about and they take their hostages with them. Now we're up to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is A Friend in Need. And we see Spider-Man. And he's wall crawling up the side of the Baxter building. And the Fantastic Four movie will be coming out this Friday. And I'll be taking a look at that film. So anyway, Spider-Man, he's back to the Baxter building. Whenever Spider-Man needs the Fantastic Four, he takes the direct route. He doesn't go through the lobby, doesn't bother with the elevators, doesn't even walk up the stairs. He just swings along the side of the building here and then crawls on it. He's looking for a window that he can break into. However, before he can actually do any damage, a long, elongated arm reaches out and grabs Spider-Man by the side. And Spider-Man is taken aback by this. Turn the page. And we see that is Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic, who is in his jammies. Now, at this time, Marvel was selling underoos. But Reed Richards, he's not wearing underoos here. And I imagine Sue would probably divorce him if he did. But anyway, Reed and Spider-Man, they've known each other for decades. And Spider-Man's seeing something very odd with Reed, is that he's really sweating a lot. And the thing is that Reed Richards has the flu. And because of this effort to kind of tackle Spider-Man here, it's kind of pushed him to the edge, and he faints. So Spider-Man is very concerned. He's like, "Hey, I came here for help, and now the help might need some help." Reed Richards is unconscious. Spider-Man is holding him in his arms. Sue Richards comes in, wondering what type of drink he gave his husband. And are you here to pull a Cosby on him? And Spider-Man's saying, no, it's none of that. I was surprised. I didn't even touch the guy, really. And Sue says, yeah, Reed has the flu. So anyway, they both take Reed back to bed. And Sue's asking Spider-Man to leave quietly because, obviously she's concerned about her husband's health. However, Spider-Man, I should say, because he's in his costume, he's there for a different reason. He's concerned about something that is greater than just a bad case of the flu, and that he really needs Reed to be involved in this issue. So, as Spider-Man and Sue are going back and forth, Reed is hearing this and he says, "No, listen, we gotta let Spider-Man talk. He wouldn't be here and he wouldn't be so insistent unless it was something serious." So, so Sue's kind of being mother hen here, but nevertheless, Reed is insistent that we listen to Spider-Man. So Spider-Man kind of retells the events of what happened, somewhat editedly, because remember at this time, Spider-Man decided not to share his secret identity with the Fantastic Four, and that seems a little odd because there were a lot of people in the Marvel universe who did know that Spider-Man and Peter Parker were the same. Even Thor knew, but he doesn't share it with Fantastic Four, who he's fairly close with. And the fact is that Peter and Johnny Storm actually know each other outside of this, kind of like when they're superheroes. But nevertheless, that's the situation. Peter, we're brought up to date as to what happened to Peter. Peter wasn't killed, obviously, by the Crimson Dynamo, but he still took a beating. The police came. They saw him. He was unconscious. They did question him. He did say, "Listen, this is what happened." He's taken inside the Underwood's brownstone here. Peter is getting some medical attention from EMS here. We see this detective here who's questioning Peter about what's going on, asking, does Professor Underwood have any, enemies that you know of? Peter says no, that basically he's an astronomy professor probably at Empire State. And he's saying that this guy didn't have any enemies, and this guy doesn't specialize in a scientific field that a supervillain would care about. Because remember, Peter has a lot of experience dealing with supervillains. He has a lot of experience in terms of what motivates them. He knows what motivates a supervillain. He knows that the astronomy guys are not going to be bothered. He knows that the physicists, those guys are going to be bothered. Maybe the guys who deal with pathology or the study of bacteria. Those are the guys that Doctor Doom is looking at. He's looking to pluck them. Doctor Doom is not looking to pluck the astronomy guy. So anyway, Peter really doesn't want to be questioned by this detective because he wants to do his own investigation as Spider-Man. But the thing is, as Peter's ready to leave, he notices something, a piece of paper on Professor Underwood's desk. And he sees these very unique and sophisticated equations. And Peter is immediately alarmed by them because he recognizes, at least to a fair degree, that this is something that's very important here. Turn the page. And we see that Peter, when he was Peter, and when he was in Professor Ironwood's study, he had taken the piece of paper with him. So he kind of slid it away when the detectives weren't looking. He hands the equations over to Reed Richards. Reed Richards is one of the few guys, he's the smartest guy in the Marvel Universe. He figures Spider-Man knows that this guy, he's going to look at it, he's going to have a much greater feel for the science involved. Reed Richards is impressed that Spider-Man knows something about these equations. Spider-Man, kind of protecting his identity, is saying that it was actually a friend who kind of he gave me the dummies briefing for it, and Reed is impressed with the friend, which is of course Peter, and Reed figures out, he says, this is a formula for an antimatter bomb. So Reed is very concerned about the fact that these equations can be used to build a powerful bomb. Sue is kind of taking a Thunderbolt Ross view of it. A bomb is a bomb. We've been having bigger and bigger bombs every decade.
Hello, General Ross. Why the delay? What are you waiting for? Are you testing that bomb or not?
Hey, we can't worry about the size of a bomb, all right? And Reed's saying you don't understand that this bomb, if you make this bomb, this will destroy everything. This will destroy literally the entire planet. Sue, you are not going to go shopping Saturday if this thing goes off. Sue suddenly takes it very seriously at this point because her life will be inconvenienced. See, all those other bombs like the atomic bomb, the hydrogen bomb, the gamma bomb, the cobalt bomb, the neutron bomb, the G bomb, none of these bombs will actually affect Sue's ability to go shopping. This bomb will affect that. So she's concerned about this. And Reed gives a little background on the physics involved. Basically, this was a type of field that Professor Underwood was a kind of a prime mover in. And the thing is that during the 50s, Professor Underwood was blacklisted by Joseph McCarthy. And because he was blacklisted, he had gotten out of this particular type of study, and he basically went to astronomy, which is much easier, and one that probably he felt that he can get a job at. Because the thing is, for him to pursue this type of study, he would need government clearance, because he doesn't have the resources to do it himself. And Reed's impressed by this, because the thing is, when Reed found out about this type of study, it was more theoretical than practical. And now that Reed's seeing these equations, he's realizing that Professor Underwood has taken the theoretical and has made it into something practical. We see Reed is telling Spider-Man and Sue of the consequences. He's telling Spider-Man, listen, this might end the world. He's telling Sue, listen, Sue, this might end your shopping sprees. And we got to do something. Now, Reed's in bed. He has no plans on leaving bed. He's there with the milfy wife. And I guess Reed is thinking, hey, if the world's going to go, I'm going to go a little bit of comfort here. I'm going to be in my bed, going to have my MILF, and I'm going to be all set. Sue's also in bed. Now, Sue doesn't mind sleeping through crises. I remember there was, I think, an issue of the Fantastic Four, it might have been issue 71 or 72, where it looked like these were kind of like universe-ending consequences happening. And then you see all the main characters, Reed, Johnny, Ben, Galactus, whatnot. And then you see Sue. And Sue is in bed trying to sleep. So staying in bed during a crisis is something that's not new to Sue. Okay, so we're going to go to part 3. Brother, can you spare Hulk? And this is our introduction to the Hulk. So the first 2 chapters were on Spider-Man, kind of setting it up. And this comic still follows the 3-act formula, although Chris Claremont had broken it up into multiple chapters. And we see the situation here kind of looks like a situation you would see in the Hulk TV show. We see Dr. Banner. He's working a menial job, trying to keep his head low, trying to stay out of the headlines, stay out of under the radar from the Hulkbusters, because General Ross is still hunting for him at this point. He's in a bar. He's in a bar in Castle Rock, Montana. And I guess there's not a whole lot to do in Castle Rock, Montana. So these guys, they just go into a bar. They probably have a few slot machines. They probably end up losing most of their paycheck. And they just end up beating the shit out of each other. A couple of patrons are under tables, but for the most part, these guys are slugging it out here. We see this one guy who's is just basically stepping on the neck of this other. Meanwhile, there's this kind of like this Logan Wolverine type guy who's on his shoulders here. Bruce is kind of just walking through this carnage. He has beers and pitchers to get to this table. He has to worry about his tip here. He doesn't care. He's just stepping on this unconscious guy. He just doesn't care. Turn the page. See a couple ads. The ads, there weren't too many ads. I think this is, well, there are probably a lot more ads than there should be, but because this is a king size, the ads don't seem to get in the way too much. There's this one contest here, popsicle sweepstakes. It looks really complicated. This, I'm sure a bunch of kids were just disqualified simply because the rules are just so hyper specific. See the kids here, they're drawn with kind of like elephants and gorillas in the background. Everyone's smiling. Crocodiles are there. These are three animals that can easily murk these two smiling kids, but you know. Oh, they're saying here, this illustration is representative of an exciting trip our first prize winners will enjoy. Oh yeah, we'll feed you to crocodiles. We'll have gorillas tear you apart, and we'll have elephants stomp on you. So go back to the story. So the fight's continuing. However, one patron is hit by another. The patron that is being hit, he's being pushed into Bruce Banner. So the whole tray of beers are spilled to the ground. And then suddenly another patron grabs Bruce and he punches him with a left uppercut here. Bruce didn't know he was drafted into the fight. I guess once he dropped that beer, his value to the rest of the patrons had dropped to 0, and he was fair game. And then he's thrown out of the bar here. And we see Bruce here, and he's saying, "Oh no, heart's racing, adrenaline surging through my bloodstream. I can't help myself. I'm starting to change into the Hulk." And that transformation is happening. However, there is an individual watching this. And again, he looks like he's from Stone Castle, Montana. Kind of has the whole cowboy look here. And he has a gun, and he fires the gun at the transforming Bruce Banner. So this is sort of like the Bruce Banner Hulk hybrid. And it turns out that it's a non-lethal gun. It's a tranquilizer gun. So the tranquilizer dart puts Dr. Banner to sleep before the transformation can fully happen. So at this point, Dr. Banner has transformed back to himself. And the individual here is speaking to the unconscious doctor, saying, "Pleasant dreams, comrade doctor. Let's hope that when you wake up, the rest of the world will still be alive to greet you." So we kind of have an idea that this guy really isn't a villain here, although he is specifically looking for the Hulk. Now, I think at this point, I'll kind of talk about the Hulk TV show. I was a huge fan of it. I remember watching the premiere episode. I was 11 at the time. The show didn't really bear much resemblance to the Hulk that we see in the comics. The reason is obvious. They just didn't have the technology or the special effects to do it. it was the real winner of the kind of like the superhero TV shows, at least for Marvel. The CBS at the time not only had the Hulk show, but they also had Spider-Man and Wonder Woman. God, maybe Spider-Man can answer that, Siren. But the reason why CBS invested so much into superhero shows at the time was that action-oriented shows tended to do better in the ratings. But the problem is that there were a lot of advocacy groups at the time who did not like violence on TV. And the CBS executives were sort of thinking along the lines of, say, Adam West's show, Adam West's Batman 66 show, where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of action, but it's done in a cartoonish setting. So the CBS executives were thinking, listen, we can have an action show, but at the same time, the setting is so cartoonish that people won't take it seriously. So that was the thinking that the CBS executives had. So I'm going to go back into the story. We see Dr. Banner. He wakes up. He was put to bed. So the individual who knocked him out did take some care into his physical being. We kind of hope he wasn't Cosby'd. So Banner wakes up. The effects of the tranquilizer are still affecting him. So even though he's awake, he has kind of this killer headache. And he's not quite sure what exactly happened. However, a one-eyed man, one-eyed because he has a patch over the other, he comes in and he informs Dr. Banner of what happened. So he's kind of filling in the spots for Dr. Banner. Dr. Banner is actually recognizes this individual. And it's an individual, I know I'm going to mispronounce the name, I'm going to say it, Vashkin. This guy was Vashkin who shot him. And apparently what happened is that Vashkin is a top KGB agent. And when Banner was working, before he became the Hulk, when he was a scientist for the weapons program, the U.S.'s weapons program. I almost said New York's weapons program. He was obviously briefed on dangerous individuals. And one of them was Vashkin, because he was considered the top KGB agent at the time. But the thing is that Vashkin is not here as an enemy, because Banner is thinking, hey, this guy's going to try to kidnap me, then fly me to Russia so I can work on, so they can force me to work on their weapons program. But Vashkin is saying, no, it's not anything like that. And he actually gives Dr. Banner a change of clothing here. Now, the two are in a camper, very similar to the one that Walter and Jesse had. And I'm kind of wondering that after this mission, maybe Vashkin will say, hey, do you know how to cook some meth here? But the thing is that Vashkin is kind of giving Dr. Banner a briefing as to what happened. And he's telling him that basically, listen, if I was planning on taking you to Russia, you would already be there. But these are consequences that go beyond just the Cold War. This is like the existence of the entire Earth. And he was sent here by the KGB to stop that from happening. So this is an interesting setup here where the Russians are the good guys. The Russians are the ones who are looking out for the existence of the planet. Now, there are, you would think, okay, that maybe the Russian government would share this information with the U.S. government. We find out there are reasons why the Russians want to keep this quiet. And we'll find out when we turn the page. But Vashkin is warning Dr. Banner that the whole world could be obliterated because of this. And what he's saying is that during this time in the late 70s, the mid to late 70s, there were a lot of talks with the U.S. government and the Russian government about de-escalating the Cold War and de-escalating the nuclear threat. And there were actually a number of talks, such as SALT, the SALT talks, strategic arms limitation talks, and détente, and they were very successful. And these talks kind of got both countries to kind of de-escalate the nuclear threat. The reason is that the Soviets were fighting a war in Afghanistan. They obviously needed to switch resources from the Cold War to Afghanistan. So that kind of motivated them to get to the talks. And I'm sure there were other things too. In the U.S., we had a president who wanted to cut the taxes of the rich, because in the United States, the rich have too little and the poor have too much. So Reagan, who was never a fan of nuclear weapons to begin with, he wanted fewer weapons. In fact, he wanted zero nuclear weapons, and he was actually genuine about that. And I don't know why, because he clearly was okay with military action, but for some reason he just did not like nuclear weapons. But as the nuclear talks were being more successful, as the general staff was accepting the fact that, we're going to have less nukes rather than more, there was one general on the general staff who was very vocal about this being a bad thing. So while everyone else wanted the Cold War to get colder, he wanted the Cold War to get hotter. And he was so angered by these limitation talks that he resigned his commission on the Russian military staff. I don't know what the hell they call it. So anyway, this guy is kind of youngish, very hawkish, has a lot of Biff Tannen energy to him. He resigns in a fit. But the thing is that he still has access to all this information, and he has a plot, and he's going to escalate things the way he wants it, which is much higher and much hotter. So the general, he's able to go into the Russian master database. He's able to pull out information that he needs. He also enlisted the assistance of 3 Russian-powered superheroes, or super-powered individuals. I don't know whether they're villains or heroes at this point. Crimson Dynamo, Dark Star, and Vanguard. Obviously, he gaslit these 3. He didn't tell them what he was planning on doing. They would not have done it, and he knows it. So he just kind of told them this elaborate lie where he was the one who was going to save the world from this. And Vashti is telling Dr. Banner this. And Dr. Banner agrees with Vashti that this guy needs to be stopped. And he explains why Professor Underwood was a target of theirs. Because the thing is, the type of physics that Professor Underwood was working with, this general got information about that. And this intrigued him. And he wants to kidnap the rogue general. I couldn't pronounce his name. Nikolai Kotzvolt. I'm just going to call him the general. So the general wanted Professor Ironwood to build this bomb for him. And the thing is that the general is just a big dumb Biff Tannen type. He just knows that this is going to be a powerful bomb. He doesn't know that this bomb will actually destroy the Earth. He's just thinking that this is a bomb that will just go boom a little louder than some of the others. And Dr. Banner, he sees the gravity of the situation. He believes Vashti here, and that he agrees to help. And Vashti is explaining, listen, if I need scientific help, I'll get it from you. And if I need a little muscle, I'll get it from the Hulk. So this is a 2-for-1 deal for me. And guess what? The prize is the world doesn't go boom. And that's enough for Dr. Banner. So then we go into chapter 4. Rocky Mountain High, Far Out. So anyway, Fantastic Four, Despite the consequences, two of their members are still going to stay in bed. And a solo pogo plane was sent out with one passenger in it, Spider-Man, to the Rocky Mountains. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, I don't know exactly how the FF knew to go here. My guess is that it was the Spider Tracer. That Reed Richards was somehow able to enhance the signal that the Spider Tracer gives out. And he said that, listen, the Spider Tracer's signature is coming from the Rocky Mountains. And he doesn't know exactly where, but he's pretty close to where he can pre-program the pogo plane, and it will fly Spider-Man out. Spider-Man, he jumps out of the pogo plane here. He is enjoying the sights. He makes it clear that he's impressed with the Rocky Mountains. The Rocky Mountains are not drawn impressively, though. So while Spider-Man might be impressed with the Rocky Mountains, Alan Kupperberg was not, because these mountains look like unappealing ash mounds. But nevertheless, Spider-Man is impressed. He's enjoying the skydiving here. He does have a parachute on him. He's also thinking about the fact that he is on this mission to save the world. And this is something that he's not really designed for. Because Spider-Man, he's the meat and potatoes superhero. He's the guy who he goes after the muggers. He goes after the shoplifters. You know, it's kind of like the Shazam TV show where you had the Earth's mightiest mortal, and he's stopping truants and joyriders. Now, some of Spider-Man's villains might not be happy about hearing some of these thoughts. Like, for example, Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus kind of sees himself as a world conqueror. And sometimes he's had those plans. He doesn't want to be told that his arch nemesis is the lowly, meat and potatoes Spider-Man who stops muggers. But nevertheless, he sees himself as local talent, but here he is on the national stage, gonna save the world. Turn the page. So anyway, it turns out that Spider-Man actually has this kind of hand glider set up as a parachute. So it's not really a true parachute where it would just kind of drop him down somewhat gently. This is a glider setup where he can kind of he can glide, because he still has to find the specific spot where Cissy is. And this is the Rocky Mountains, and it's pretty big here. And he doesn't have those tall buildings to web on. So he has to kind of hand glide here until he sees something that, kind of piques his interest. Now, at this time, Dr. Banner and Vashti are heading into the Rocky Mountains themselves. They're taking the scenic route because they don't want to give away their position or their presence to the general here. And it turns out that the Russians were able to build this kind of NORAD type of base in the Rocky Mountains without the knowledge of the U.S. government. So this is probably part of the reason why Russia doesn't want to say anything to the United States government, because they don't know about this base here. And it's going to be very embarrassing for them to explain it. Not the fact that also the United States would probably tear it apart and find out what their most sophisticated weapons or communication systems look like. So they're kind of taking this scenic route into the Russian citadel. However, it turns out the general is watching this. He's watching this on his view screen, and he's also overhearing the conversation that the two are having. The general is a lunatic here. Yeah, you remember, he's sort of like Khan in that he sees himself as the hero. So Vashti and Banner are talking about this guy as he's a raving lunatic who's a complete moron who doesn't know the destructive powers that he's trying to harness. And the general, he's creating his own reality. So the general is kind of stuck in this distorted reality where he's the hero here. Professor Underwood is resistant to helping this lunatic. Um, however, the Russian general again. He's channeling Drago here. He starts to pimp slap the professor here, and the professor's saying, "Listen, you can't force me to do it." And the professor with one pimp slap, he kind of pushes Underwood. He said, listen, Tracy didn't want to go on that stage, but when Syl got her from Ralphie's home, she went on that stage. And that was after that pimp slap. So then the general, he's getting tired of Professor Underwood. I can understand Professor Underwood. He's probably like really long winded. Probably has that old man smell. He doesn't want to deal with him. He said, "Listen, if getting heavy with you won't work, there is your daughter." Obviously, Professor Underwood, he is very protective of his good girl daughter here. So he does work on the bomb based on that threat. And then we see the general. He's calling in his 3 dupes. Dynamo, Darkstar, and Vanguard. Turn the page. And take a look at this 2-page ad. It is for CBS's new Saturday morning lineup. CBS was using the Munker Looking Good at this time. I think it was around this time where ABC's dominance was starting to slip a little. From like 1976 to about 1979, holy crap! I mean, just about more than half the homes in America were watching ABC shows. But I think around this time, around 79, 80, I think ABC's dominance was slipping a little. Take a look at some of the new shows. See Mighty Mouse. Never liked Mighty Mouse. Never liked the original. Never liked this incarnation. See Heckle and Jekyll. It's kind of an odd thing. I remember watching the cartoons. I thought the cartoons were entertaining. These are the older ones that would play on local TV in New York. They were always. I think the characters were somewhat problematic in that. They were kind of associated with racist tropes, similar to the crows in Fritz the Cat. And then at 9 o'clock, there was the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show. I remember enjoying that. I always enjoyed the Roadrunner and Bugs and Daffy. And then there was the all-new Popeye Hour. I wasn't a fan of this incarnation of Popeye. I did enjoy the original Max Fletcher cartoons. I also enjoyed those batshit crazy 1960s Popeye shows. The stories were insane, but I never cared for this one. But I think like the following summer, Robin Williams live action Popeye came out, which was a really good film. Then we see Fat Albert. Fat Albert was a staple. Unfortunately, Fat Albert's legacy is tainted by Bill Cosby. Then after that is Jason of Star Command. Never watched that. I was aging out of new cartoons at this point. So I would kind of watch cartoons I was watching as a kid, but I never really started any new cartoons. Then we see Tarzan. That was actually kind of a good cartoon, even though like totally racist tropes. Batman and the Freedom Force. I never watched the Freedom Force. So that's it. That's what's going on with CBS. And again, this issue was released in September, middle of September. So yeah, so kids would be interested in that. So then we go back to the story. We see the 3 Russian superpowered individuals. They're going after Banner and Vashti here. They're both on horseback here, and the Russians have the drop on those two because these two don't know that they're being watched, much less ambushed at this point. We see the Russians are talking amongst themselves, and they're starting to show some doubts because the general had told them, listen, the KGB is sending out, their agents to end this, and along with, the U.S. agents. But the thing is, they only see two individuals, and this makes Dark Star very suspicious because she's like, hey, if the intelligence services know about this, they're probably going to send out more than two guys, and I'm just seeing two guys here. I do have to say that Dark Star is drawn so beautifully in these pages here. Oh, if you can find a real life version of this woman. So anyway, Dark Star has the most doubts. It seems like Vanguard has some doubts, but he's a little harder to convince. So the thing is, he's sort of like in the middle here, saying, well, yeah, I understand it looks bad, but we still got to trust the general until we know otherwise. So he's being a little bit more cautious. However, the Crimson Dynamo represents the other end, where he's saying, listen, I'm totally into what the general is saying. I down that Kool-Aid. It tastes fine. And he's going to follow orders. And then he does this. And he initiates the ambush on Dr. Banner and Vashti here. The Crimson Dynamo kind of aims like a stormtrooper, so both Vashti, Banner, and the horses are fine. However, the horses are scared as hell, and they start to run off. They don't really know what to do. Well, no, Vashti knows what to do. Dr. Banner doesn't, because he's not used to this. But the adrenaline starts to pump, his heart starts to race, and he undergoes the transformation into the Hulk. So we're going to see the Hulk for the first time. Now the horse that Banner is on notices that Dr. Banner really got heavy very quickly, and the horse throws the Hulk off its back here to obviously prevent it from breaking its back. Hulk is in immediate crackhead mode here, so when he's just viewing things the same way a crackhead would, and he realizes that the horse threw him off, and he is pissed at that horse, and he is going to get even with this horse. He's going to show this horse who's boss. And the worst part is that Hulk is saying, "Dumb horse threw Hulk for no reason." Now, if he had a good reason, maybe Hulk takes this. But no. For a crackhead, there is no good reason to be rude to him. Turn the page. So, Hulk, he's looking for street revenge here. So he's going right after that horse there. Vashti is also thrown off his horse too. But the thing is, Hulk notices another ray coming from the Crimson Dynamo here. So then he notices the three Russians, and he figures that the horse was not actually looking to be rude to Hulk, but that these puny humans have scared the horse, I should say. So Hulk here realizes his target. He also, again, crackhead mode. He realizes, hey, if he needs spare change, he's not going to get it from the horses. He's going to get it from these guys. So Hulk, he's going to teach these three a lesson. What he does is that since the three Russians were on a cliff above Hulk, Hulk grabs the face of that cliff and he yanks it out. And this throws the three Russians into free fall here. The one that lands first, obviously, is the heaviest one, and that's Crimson Dynamo. Crimson Dynamo falls right flat on his back here. Hulk is like, again, crackhead mode. There are no fair fights with crackheads. So the fact that Crimson Dynamo is on his back flailing does not bother the Hulk. Hulk is immediately going for him. Hulk turns the Dynamo over, and he is looking at that red ass there. And he said, dude, guess where this fist is heading? Now, before Dynamo can be assaulted in this way, Darkstar and Vanguard, they go into action. Darkstar uses her Dark Force to hold the Hulk back. And this kind of throws the Hulk back. Vanguard immediately rushes the Hulk. I don't understand Vanguard's powers exactly. He might have the ability to absorb kinetic energy. So if the Hulk throws something at him, Vanguard might be able to use some of that energy to kind of like deflect the Hulk's blows. So anyway, Vanguard is mostly dealing with the Hulk at this point. Now, when Darkstar used her Dark Force to try to capture the Hulk was able to break out of the Force. But the thing is, the kinetic energy that the Hulk released, doing this, it fed back into Darkstar, who is again beautifully drawn, and she's kind of thrown unconscious. She has a concussion because of this. And because of this, she's more or less out of the fight. Because the thing is, Darkstar could kind of shorten this story a great deal if she has all her facilities, her mental and physical facilities. But Chris Claremont knows this, so he kind of has to throw her for a loop. So the readers don't go, hey, why didn't Darkstar do this? So Vanguard and the Hulk, they go at it. It's kind of even at this point. The Hulk has his strength. Vanguard has those power blasts, and it creates a situation where Hulk hits Vanguard. Vanguard's able to block it and throw some power at him. Hulk comes back badder and stronger. Vanguard's he steps up his energy output, and they kind of go back and forth. But it's kind of a fight the Hulk is designed to win for, because at some point the Hulk is just going to overwhelm Vanguard. Vanguard, he checks on Darkstar, because the Hulk has been kind of thrown into a landslide, a rock slide, I should say. So Hulk is buried under some rock. Vanguard's checking, seeing how Darkstar is. Vanguard, he sees this woman. She's really beautiful, really powerful. He's going to be really nice to her, going to make sure she's all right. Vanguard says that he's never used this much power before than he did against the Hulk, and he's kind of hoping this will end the fight, because he's kind of tired. Turn the page. It turns out the Hulk is back. He immediately unburies himself from the rock slide, and he's back for more. He wants revenge against Vanguard, and Vanguard and the Hulk, they keep going at it. Darkstar is still a little discombobulated here, so she really can't join in the fight here. And then it looks like the Hulk is able to push back Vanguard. So at this point, the Hulk is actually kind of winning this fight. Then Spider-Man shows up. Finally, Spider-Man shows up, and that's how a lot of viewers of the TV show felt, because I think there were only maybe 13 or 14 episodes of the show. And what had happened? I remember the Spider-Man TV show. I was there the first night, watching it. I knew in advance that Hollywood did not have the technology to create a dynamic Spider-Man, and that's exactly what happened. The Spider-Man TV show just wasn't dynamic, and the thing is, if they couldn't make Spider-Man dynamic, they couldn't do anything about his foes. And the the producers did try. They got a legendary stuntman to play Spider-Man. From what I understand, Nicholas Hammonds only wore the Spider-Man costume one time. That's when he originally created it, and he was looking at himself in the mirror, and he takes off the mask. This is the pilot movie, and I believe that was the only time Nicholas Hammonds wore that outfit. Because the producers realized they couldn't really do Spider-Man, so they were trying to do Peter Parker, boy reporter, who's also a superhero from time to time. That kind of describes the TV show. And the show had mixed success. It did fairly well in the ratings, but the problem is that it did well with a very undesirable demographic as far as CBS was concerned. There were a lot of young kids, a lot of geeky guys who were watching this show. These are people who are not going to buy cars. They're not going to buy expensive stuff. So while the ratings were fairly decent for the most part, CBS had a hard time getting their money back, simply because the ad agencies would not buy commercial time for the show. It was different. I think at the time, the most profitable show on TV was actually Three's Company. And the reason why Three's Company was so profitable, even though I don't think it was the number one show at the time, was the fact that it attracted a large demographic that advertisers wanted. So advertisers, I say, not people, just people, they were willing to pay top dollar to have their commercials run on Three's Company. They were not willing to do this with Spider-Man. So that's part of the reason why the show was canceled, even though it had actually decent ratings. So anyway, I don't know what started that tangent, but anyway, Spider-Man's here. Spider-Man shows up. The stuntman, yeah. Okay, I should mention, yeah, they couldn't create a dynamic Spider-Man. They brought in this legendary stuntman, and he did these really impressive stunts. But the thing is, they were impressive if you saw them live. You watch them on TV, and he's moving so slowly, and that was a huge problem for the TV show. So anyway, now to get back into the comic story. Spider-Man, he dives in. He sees Crimson Dynamo and Darkstar. He encountered them earlier as Peter Parker, so he doesn't have to ask himself, are they the good guys or not? He knows they're not. Crimson Dynamo is concerned about Darkstar because Darkstar is still a little discombobulated here. And Crimson Dynamo, he's kind of channeling Rocky. Come on, you need to believe in yourself. You need to gather yourself. This is the final bell, and we really need you here. And then Spider-Man, he attacks from behind. He does an overhand left against the Crimson Dynamo. I would not necessarily advise anyone punching a guy in armor with bare knuckles. But this is Spider-Man. Crimson Dynamo's taken aback by this. He's kind of thrown off, but he's not really hurt. He's more surprised. And Spider-Man, he goes on the offensive against the Dynamo here. Dynamo's much more powerful than Spider-Man, but the thing is, Spider-Man has the advantage of surprise. One thing Spider-Man is surprised about is that when he does tackle the Crimson Dynamo, Dynamo is really using his strength. He's not using any of his gadgets, his like Iron Man type gadgets. And Spider-Man is noticing this. And he figures that maybe during the tussles, both as Peter Parker and this, that he might have damaged the weaponry that the Crimson Dynamo has. So the thing is, Dynamo is just kind of trying to slug it out with Spider-Man because he doesn't have access to those repulsor rays or those other weapons. Turn the page. A couple ads, not terribly interesting. So then Spider-Man, he's employing kind of these hit and run tactics because he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to slug it out with the Dynamo close up. He wants to be more like the boxer and kind of circle and kind of hit and run Crimson Dynamo. Crimson Dynamo is still a powerful foe. Again, he's not using any gadgets against him. He's using his strength. But this was already explained to the reader that the gadgets may be offline in some way. Now, as the Crimson Dynamo is attempting to throw this large boulder at Spider-Man, Spider-Man jumps on the boulder. He's able to break off a small piece of the boulder off, and he uses that to kind of club the Crimson Dynamo here. So once again, Dynamo has been taken out by Spider-Man. Spider-Man is trying to talk to Darkstar. Once again, he knows of Darkstar, and he probably figures that of the three, she's the one that, he can talk to. And he also knows about the champion, so he has that tie where he has information that he can use to talk to her. Darkstar, she looks beautiful, but she's a little confused here. She does explain what they were told, that the United States was preparing a nuclear attack, and this is why they're here, to assist in, kind of stopping that nuclear attack by the U.S. Spider-Man says this is crazy. He didn't hear about any of this in the Bugle offices. Darkstar says, "We were told this by one of the highest ranking officers in the KGB. And those guys never lie." And Spider-Man says, "Those guys are crazy." Now, at this point, Spider-Man's Spidey sense is calling out. And then he realizes he sees the Hulk. The Hulk and Vanguard, they're still going through this tussle here. Where, Hulk goes forward, Vanguard pushes him back. Hulk gets angrier, more crackheadishness from him, and Vanguard's just kind of pushing him back. But at this point, it looks like the Hulk is going to prevail just simply through persistence. But the thing is, that last blast that Vanguard gave the Hulk was powerful enough to start damaging the mountain structure, and this causes a huge avalanche. And Spider-Man has to think fast. He has to save himself, but he also realizes there's a really hot chick next to him, so he goes and he grabs that hot chick. Hulk and Vanguard, they're on their own at this point. And this is a pretty impressive mountain slide here, because Spider-Man has to go a long distance. Not only does he have to carry himself, he also has to be mindful of the boulders and the avalanche of the mountain facade. I'm going to turn the page. And again, this looks a little bit like filler here, because this mountain slide is going on for quite a long time. But nevertheless, Spider-Man is able to save himself and Darkstar at this point. But he's lost track of where Hulk and Vanguard are. Turn the page. So anyway, it turns out that when Spider-Man returns to where Vanguard and the Hulk were, he also takes Darkstar with him. It turns out that both of them were under the rock slide, because Spider-Man, I should say, he sees Dr. Banner's hand coming out from under the rocks. It turns out both Dr. Banner and Vanguard, they were kind of knocked unconscious, but they did survive. Spider-Man is talking to Bruce Banner at this point, saying, "Listen, you got an ally in me." But the thing is that Dr. Banner has knowledge that Spider-Man doesn't. And he shares what's going on with what the General is planning on doing with both Spider-Man and Darkstar. So both of them are kind of debriefed here, where this rogue general has kidnapped Professor Ironwood. So Professor Ironwood would build this very large, powerful bomb. The general just knows this as a bomb that goes boom really loud, but he doesn't know that it could possibly destroy the whole world. So at this point, again, this is good writing from Chris Claremont, because basically in one panel of expository dialogue, Spider-Man is completely up to date, along with the other Russian heroes. Dark Star, she's still discombobulated, and she needs to be for the story to continue, because she could end a lot of this very quickly. She's going to stay behind and help her Russian comrades. While Spider-Man, he's going to take Bruce Banner up to the Citadel's entrance. Now, at this point, the spider tracer that Spider-Man had put on Cissy's belt, he's picking up the signals. So obviously they've gotten close enough to where Spider-Man can track the entrance simply by following the signals from the spider tracer. We see the last of Dark Star from behind. She's wearing yoga pants, looking fucking awesome here. And she's wishing Spider-Man and Dr. Banner the best of luck. And Spider-Man knows he has a tough hill to climb, because he said, "Listen, we're gonna need all the help we can get." Meanwhile, the KGB agent Vashti, he knew where the entrance was through the Russian database, so he went on his own. So he didn't stick around for this fight with Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Russians. We go to part 5. A man's life or a world. So we're back at this Russian secret NORAD base. The professor has built the bomb. The guy's a fucking idiot. He built a working model. He built a working model for this lunatic. Apparently, as smart as this professor is, he never heard of the term malicious compliance. No, he couldn't sabotage or quietly sabotage the prototype or make up some excuse to delay it. No, he builds this lunatic a working model of a bomb that can destroy the world, and he did it for a man who would have no problems whatsoever activating it. This might be Chris Claremont saying something about nuclear physicists who assist in these weapons programs. We see Cissy there. She's quietly helping her dad recover. The general wants to start to activate the bomb. However, it turns out that before Spider-Man and Dr. Banner show up, Vashti shows up. And he interrupts the general. Now, at this point, Vashti has the general... He has the general covered with his pistol. He could have just murked the general right there, but Vashti insisted on this mano a mano kind of standoff here. It's a very dramatic moment. Vashti wants his drama, and of course the two know each other and they don't like each other. Turn the page. So then, as Vashti, who's quite long-winded, quite dramatic, he's going, back and forth. Do you want to hear what I have to say next? Now, the general at this time, he's able to grab a wrench, and he throws it at Vashti, and he's able to disarm Vashti by hitting him in the hand that's holding the gun. And then we see now Vashti has been disarmed. And the general, he immediately tackles Vashti here. The general, showing all that Biff Tannen energy here, just starts wailing on Vashti. He grabs the wrench, and he's basically telling Vashti at this point that he's going to be operating on Vashti, giving him some brain operation here. However, before the heavy wrench goes down and hits Vashti's skull, Spider-Man webs it. So the general is confused here, and he sees Spider-Man. And in the background, we see Dr. Banner. And what's happening here is that the general is taking on Spider-Man here. Even though the general is not super powered, he does have a costume on, and he is quite a impressive physical specimen. So it's similar to the Kingpin, where the Kingpin doesn't have superpowers, but nevertheless he's such an impressive physical specimen. He's able to kind of go toe to toe with Spider-Man, and this general is the same way too. So Spider-Man was upside down on the cave ceiling, and Vashti takes the webbing that's on the wrench, and he grabs it, and he yanks Spider-Man off the roof here. So Spider-Man here is, at this point, he's on his heels at this point. He lands on his heels here. He's still kind of, he's off kilter here. He realizes that this guy is as strong as the Kingpin. So he can put up a physical fight here. Vashti, not Vashti, the general. The general grabs a machine gun, and he fires indiscriminately in the direction of Spider-Man. And the professor and Cissy are in the way, but he fires right through them. Spider-Man realizes this is a very dangerous situation, not only because of the machine gun, but also the fact that the general just fired indiscriminately at them. So he realizes this guy's not necessarily going to care where he's aiming. Can turn the page. Spider-Man, he's able to turn off the lights in the cave. The general still has the machine gun, so he's still dangerous, but because there's no lights, Spider-Man has an easier time ducking the bullets. The general is rushing toward Dr. Banner here. Dr. Banner is trying to help out. He can help out by being the Hulk, but he doesn't want to do that. So he kind of clumsily gets in the general's way. So Dr. Banner stops the general by kind of being a doorstop here. Spider-Man takes advantage of the situation. He knocks the general out. So at this point, this guy's out of commission. But the problem is that the bombs became active during the fight. And again, this dumbass professor who gave this lunatic a working model of a bomb that can destroy the world, he also didn't put a failsafe in it. The professor, he's saying that this is all my fault. Spider-Man and Dr. Banner are thinking, no shit, asshole. They're trying to figure out how to stop it. Of course, you have three very intelligent people here discussing this matter. And Spider-Man has come to the conclusion that, hey, the Hulk can really help out here. Because the thing is, you have these two large globes, and the explosion, the critical mass that's going to occur will only happen when these two globes touch each other. As long as these two globes don't physically touch each other, there won't be any type of chain reaction. Dr. Banner saying that, hey, that's a really good idea, except I kind of don't feel like changing into the Hulk. Now, I have to remind people in the TV show, Dr. Banner did Hulk out over a payphone call. He didn't have a quarter for a payphone, and he hulked out over that.
Please deposit 25 cents for the first 3 minutes.
I know 25 cents!
Destruction of the world. No, Dr. Banner's like, hey, count me out. I just don't feel it. And that's actually what he tells Spider-Man. He says, I just don't feel it. Spider-Man's like, are you fucking kidding me? And then he turns into Silvio, and he starts those pimp slaps. And part of it is obviously to get a rouse out of Dr. Banner turned to Spider-Man. Part of it is like Spider-Man just can't simply believe this guy. And he's saying, really? You're not going to turn into Hulk to save the world? Really? Really? But you'll become the Hulk because you don't have a quarter for the payphone. But then it works. He's the Hulk. Hulk is in crackhead mode. All he knows is that he's been pimp slapped. He doesn't like it. Hulk saying, "Listen, I'm not Tracy. I'm gonna fight back." And Spider-Man realizes he's in trouble because the Hulk has him in kind of like this vice-like grip. Turn the page. Take a look at one ad. It's for ABC's Sunday morning lineup. Unlike the 2-page ad that CBS had, ABC, they just had 1 page. NBC didn't even bother, at least not this month. We see that the Super Friends are still on the air. I was an original watcher of the Super Friends. I was in kindergarten at the time. Those are the Wendy and Marvin years. And I do have some affection for those. Even though I still enjoyed the Jan and Zaina years. See, Plastic Man, all new. Never liked Plastic Man, both in comics and in cartoon. Even though I recognized that a great artist, I think what was his name, Alex Cole, had created the character. Mighty Man and Yuck Mouth or Yuckhead, Rickety Rocket. These are shows I never watched. Fang Face, Scooby and Scrappy Doo. Damn well wasn't watching that. And then there was the Spider Woman cartoon, which Spider Woman looks well drawn, but again I never watched it. Turn the page. So we see Spider-Man. He's in big trouble. The Hulk has him. He's pissed off. He's in crackhead mode. Spider-Man has to figure out how to deal with this raging crackhead. Crackheads, I remember they were some of the most arrogant people I've ever encountered. If they wanted to stop you, they would grab you. They would physically grab your arm and stop you. And but Spider-Man has practice in this. He breaks free of the grip. But then he tricks Hulk into a contest, saying that, "Listen, Hulk, I'm stronger than you, and I can prove it by stopping these 2 globes from touching." The 2 globes are kind of on this rail, so they're kind of on this small little track, getting closer and closer. Hulk says, "Listen, I can do something. I can do this really better than you. Get out of the way." He pushes Spider-Man out of the way, and he shows Spider-Man that he's also strong. By the fact that he's pushing the globes even further away. Now, this helps temporarily, because as long as the globes aren't touching, there's going to be no chain reaction. But that's going to last, for, how much longer? They don't know. So then we see Professor Ironwood. He throws in his 2 cents saying that the Hulk has failed. This asshole failed. But he's calling the Hulk a failure. Hulk is furious. He's in crackhead mode. He's seeing the smelly 70-year-old guy calling him a failure. And he just gets angrier and angrier, and he pushes the globes back a little bit more, but still the danger exists. Spider-Man knows that he needs to come up with some other idea to stop this chain reaction from possibly happening, because he knows the Hulk can only hold these globes back so far. So then he challenges the Hulk again. He changes the rules, saying, "Listen, Hulk, okay, you proved you're pretty strong here by stopping these globes, but how about you throwing one of these globes into orbit?" Turn the page. Hulk takes that challenge. He says, "Listen, I can do that easy." So then he punches one of the globes. The globe flies off the track. It flies out of the mountain, and it's heading into orbit at this point. So Hulk believes he's won this contest. He wants that spare change. He's earned that spare change because of this. Then Spider-Man seemingly kind of runs and tackles the Hulk. Now this might seem like a thing where Hulk once again is treated with some ingratitude, but the thing is that the attraction between the 2 globes is so strong that when the first globe went into orbit, the second globe was going to follow it because of the atomic level attraction between them. And what Spider-Man was doing, he was actually pushing the Hulk out of the way because he didn't want the Hulk to be accidentally attached to this globe. And Spider-Man is kind of he's thinking this, but he's not actually telling the Hulk this. And this is a little dangerous. You kind of have to share this information with the Hulk. So it turns out the two globes actually do touch, but they touch in out of the atmosphere and into the void of space. So there is a very large, powerful explosion. But the thing is, it happened so far away from the Earth that it doesn't cause the planet any damage. So everything's kind of wrapping up here. Hulk is getting some praise here from Spider-Man and the Underwoods. He's not getting any Twinkies. He's not getting any spare change, but he's getting cheap words of praise. And that's enough to relax the Hulk. Hulk turns back into Bruce Banner here. We see Vashti, the KGB agent. He's in the background. He's armed. So while Spider-Man is concerned with Dr. Banner, Vashti points his gun. Now Spider-Man's thinking, holy crap, this guy's going to either take a shot at me or Banner. But he shoots Professor Underwood. Cissy kind of makes her presence known, which is something, she's threaded quite lightly in this story. She yells out for, Dad! And the professor, it looks like he's shot almost dead center. So he's kind of shot near the heart here. Spider-Man webs up Vashti, wanting to know why Vashti had done that. But the thing is that they're looking at the professor. They realize it's not good for him. Cissy's saying, Dad, are you going to be all right? Dr. Banner says, forget it, babe. This guy's heading for the morgue. Spider-Man, he's angry at Vashti, the KGB agent. But the thing is, there's a weak voice that calls out and actually defends Vashti. And it turns out to be, turn the page, Professor Underwood. Professor Underwood is defending Vashti, the man who shot him. And he's saying that the knowledge he has is so great and so powerful that as long as I'm alive, some supervillain, no matter who it was, it might be Frogman, could intimidate him into building another bomb here. Because again, he built a bomb for this lunatic, a working model, with no failsafe to turn it off. So the professor is saying, listen, I'm too smart to live. I'm too dumb to make good decisions. So then this is where it gets really cruel for poor Cissy here. In these panels, her father's dying. These are his last moments on Earth. And then she can't say anything to her dad because then Vashti starts chipping in, saying, we live in a cruel, sometimes desperate world. Knowing of the Ironwood's discovery, my masters in the Kremlin could never believe he would not build another such bomb for America. Out of the fear that you might someday use it against Russia, they would strike first with nuclear weapons, no matter what the terrible cost. Then Cissy's trying to get a word in, but no, Dr. Banner, he says, and it would mean the death of everything. The horror every nuclear weapons physicist has lived with since the first A-bomb. The horror which cost Bruce Banner his humanity. The professor's calling back. Hey, listen, dude, seriously, I don't want to listen to you. These are my last moments of existence. And he says, Cissy, love you. And then we see Spider-Man. He chips in. And Cissy dies without saying a word to her father. Because these guys, they needed the spotlight. They were the main character. This is Cissy's most tragic moment, but these three guys had to make it about themselves. And then kind of at this it kind of ends with Chris Claremont philosophizing on nuclear bombs, which is a big issue at the time. And that's it. There's no obviously there's no letters page because it's an annual, and there's no Marvel bullpen bulletins. Take a look at the last ad. The first one is for T-shirts. Put stars on your T-shirts. These are these iron-on things, iron-ons that you'd have the T-shirt, and then you would iron on these images. I had some of them. The iron-ons never lasted. We have one for Cheryl Ladd, who's very popular at the time. Suzanne Summers, very popular at the time. Kiss, the rock band Kiss, was popular at the time, and the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders. And there's also this is in association with Whoppers, the candy bar. I never liked Whoppers. And the last one is about ROM. This is the new adaptation. I believe what happened was Mattel had originally created ROM. ROM was one of the dumbest toys ever. It looked cool, but it did almost nothing. And Marvel was in charge of actually creating the backstory. I was a big fan of ROM for the first year, but then it just became too repetitive. I believe Bill Mantlo was the guy who would sort of do these Marvel adaptations of toys to the comics. Parker Brothers. I think there actually are comics that Marvel can't reprint because they don't actually own the copyright to ROM. They were just given the license to do these comics at the time. You figure the Parker Brothers probably would charge quite a bit simply because that's how business is done today, even though ROM is generating almost no value for them. And that's it. And that is my review of Marvel Team Up Annual number 2. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.